Yeah, we're late, Commissioner. Chairman, we're late.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our meeting of Lake George Park Commission. Michelle, I assume we have a quorum. We have a big quorum today. First item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Everyone had a copy of them. I believe they were corrected at one point. Does anybody have any additions or amendments? Motion to accept.
Second.
Been motioned to accept, and it's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Same thing, fiscal actions report.
Motion. Motion, second.
We've been moved to accept. Any discussion from anyone? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Project review actions report. Joe.
Resolution 2019-36. Accept the project review actions report. Whereas the Commission has received and reviewed the project review actions report prepared by the staff and dated August 13, 2019. Whereas the project review committee recommends acceptance of the project review actions report. Now therefore be resolved that the Commission directs that the project review actions report be incorporated in the minutes of the full Commission meeting. So moved.
Second. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the report. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. First project, work modification by Smith Zahowski, Town of Hague. Anybody? Holly, Joe, or anybody who wants to say anything about this before?
I can just quickly introduce it, and Jeff is here to represent the applicant. This is an application to maintain a 70-foot-long or 74-foot-long L-shaped crib dock, which was built too long based on the permit that was issued for a 40-foot dock. So we're looking at variance.
Okay. I assume you're here to speak for the applicant.
I am. My name is Jeff Meyer. I'm an attorney with Meyer, Fuller, and Stockwell here in Lake George. I'm here on behalf of Sandy Smith-Zahowski. Just to kind of follow up on what Molly alluded to and to kind of give a little more information to what's in the applicant. The property has been in their family for a real long time, 60-plus years. They carved off a portion. There was a dock. The dock got moved. And we're into the 80s now. I don't know how well things were measured back then by my client or the Park Commission, and things have changed a lot over time, but most recently, I guess in 1999, the L was added, the dock was constructed as it appears today, including the boat lift. The application and the materials that were submitted in 1999 did not accurately reflect that. Sometime after that, I think it was 2007, the Park Commission caught it and said, hey, this needs to be fixed. It sat for probably a host of reasons, and we're back here to hopefully and finally bring the dock into compliance. It is the length it is based on the water depth. They're at the end of the dock. You're looking at less than 3 feet this time of year. It's probably about 2.5 feet. My client has a modest 24-foot Larson, and it can barely be berthed this time of the year. And we're just really looking to bring the dock into compliance. Do you have any questions?
You signed a consent order that would bring it back into compliance, right?
If we can't obtain a variance, correct.
No, I think this consent order was already signed.
Right.
Yeah, and that part of the consent order was the ability to apply for a variance.
Okay.
Right.
That's not the way I understood it.
Yeah, the consent order was signed, gave them a certain date to bring it back in compliance or get a variance. We gave an extension to get us to this point in order to get the variance.
And part of the application was the cost estimate from the dock doctors that it would cost about $35,000 to remove the offending portion and to bring it into compliance.
Any other commissioners have questions at this point?
Joe, you went out and looked at it, right? Who else
Yeah.
was with you?
Well, Bill and Kathy
Yeah.
and Ken. We did some water measurements,
Right.
depth measurements, right, Joe? And what's the draft, what was the results of that, I guess? Would be,
We took them at many different,
right,
Yeah, I think
I distributed that, I think, on Friday.
yeah. And the draft of the boat is
2.9 theoretically.
2.9? 2 foot 9
2.9,
inches.
yeah.
So that would be 30.
Does that have an outdrive that you can raise up and down?
Yeah. But it's an inboard outboard, so you can only get it
Right.
up so much,
That's
correct?
what outdrives are about.
Yep.
Okay. So your depth is measured at the bottom of the hull of the boat, or is that how you measured it? How do you measure it?
Devin Dickinson went off the bottom of the boat, not the motor.
Okay.
I looked up, I was curious about that because that seemed fairly deep to me for a boat, and I believe it's called a deep draft boat when they are that deep in the water, as opposed to a boat like you can get a 24-foot Boston Whaler, which is a pretty substantial boat, and the draft on that is 14 inches. So, and that made more sense to me because I know in my experience at the lake, if you're in a shallow area, you can't have a deep boat, a deep draft boat. So while I'm sympathetic to the applicant because they own this boat, and it's kind of a tough position to be in, I don't really think that should guide us on granting variances, because if we did that, then someone could buy a fixed keel sailboat and say, I need to have a 600-foot long dock, and that seems a little bit...
Funny you should mention the sailboat, because there's a commissioner at the dock who had a sailboat who wanted us to give him a variance to accommodate his sailboat if we didn't do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's
it's
a lot
been,
of-
and I don't know whether before we get into a discussion, I think we ought to give anybody else in the audience that has anything that they want to say on this a chance, and then we'll go right back. I don't mean to cut it off, but is there anyone else in the audience that wants to speak on this before we get into a general discussion? Okay, that's covered. We're back. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, so that was one, we visited the
And you can
site.
either stand or sit, you know. If I were you, I'd stand there because you might want to respond.
I would love to respond if given the
Okay, thank you.
opportunity.
Well, we'll give you a chance. Go ahead.
We also looked at a neighbor's dock, and I'm under the impression the neighbor just to the south has a dock that is in compliance, is shorter, has the same L shape on the end of it, and this dock is much longer. And so there's an equity thing there. If the neighbor were to say, had I known I could do this, I'd build a dock that long. This dock is far longer than that dock, and so it doesn't really fit within the shoreline or the neighborhood as far as I'm concerned. And I'm trying to be sympathetic to the homeowner and find reasons to say, yeah, this is okay, but in balance, I wasn't there.
You want to say anything, Homer? We're going to keep going. You can say something now if you'd like, or later.
I don't know the depth of the neighbor's dock. I do know that part of the reason the water is so shallow where my client is because there's a stream that comes in, and a property to the south didn't properly retain sediment and stormwater during construction, and it's the reason why the water is so shallow at the end of my client's dock. And to the extent that the neighbor built a shorter dock to the south, my client's dock predates their dock, so I don't necessarily see that argument either. And I can speak to, I guess, near Indian Brook and where other places are having sedimentation coming in from these adjoining small brooks and streams, and you have granted variances in those instances as, you know, the water level is decreased and people needed to extend the dock just to make them functioning and usable.
I think that the way I see this is there's kind of like three options here. One is to be compliant, is to assign and keep the dock as we said in the consent order. which would shorten the length of the dock. The second option is if you need a dock longer because of the boat, you could extend the dock without the L shape. So in other words, you just have one finger going out, and that would be a less intrusive. And the third option is to grant the variance as requested. So,
Okay, I think I'll say something here that's, I've said that I think every single time we've had a meeting and every single time we've discussed variance because of a boat, that we don't grant variances just because of the type of boat that an applicant has. Otherwise, you could put yourself in the position of somebody buying a Mohegan. This is a little extreme, but buying a Mohegan and saying, okay, I own a Mohegan, you gotta give me a longer dock because it draws so much water. I think the more logical test, so to speak, is one, our regulations, and they're there for a reason. Two, whether or not it imposes on neighbors. Three, whether or not it imposes on safety and fairness and all of that. I myself, I never give any consideration to which boat an homeowner has. This may sound a little cruel, but we're really opening up Pandora's box if we grant permits based on the type of boat a person buys. That's my own personal opinion.
We were asked what type of boat we had. We're not necessarily arguing for the ability to keep this boat. I mean, it's frame of reference. I mean, we're talking about water that's, less than waist deep and basic usability of the
If you
property.
came in and said you had a rowboat, they'd say, well, what do you need it done for? So I understand what you did. But you understand where I'm coming from.
Absolutely. I've heard those conversations, and I've
We've had these conversations
Absolutely.
almost every meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else have any? Well, you've been awful silent this morning.
Mr. Chairman, would it be useful to have Molly maybe just detail a little bit of the history of that dock? Molly, you were telling me this morning about your review of the aerial photos and what you've seen from...
Yeah,
I'm rather confused that the dock, the physical dock was next door. And so I went through some aerial photos, and two of them, one from 1990 and one from, I think, in the 2000s, or no, before that, it had to be, before it was moved, I got 59 feet on the length of that dock. Now, there is no way that you can have a grandfather dock moved to some other place. Basically, when we issued the permit for this dock to be quote-unquote moved, the dock, it was a brand-new dock permit for that vacant lot. So it was granted for a 40-foot dock as the applicant described to me. And then, for some reason, it was built out further. So I don't really understand why it's now 74 feet if it was 59 feet over on the other side. And it was never an L over on the other part. It was a straight pier that was registered at 40 foot by 3 foot. Now, granted, I don't think that was correct. When you look at the dock in picture in 1981, there are 7 sections, and they told us each section was 8 feet. So that comes out to 56 feet, maybe there's a walkway, but at any rate, I mean, that's all seems to jive with what we found for this dock as it existed on the other site, which in a way shouldn't have anything to do with what we're looking at now, because we're looking at a dock permit that was issued in 1999 for a brand new dock. It's supposed to be 40 feet, and it was built at 74 feet. So now we come to the point of, we need a variance to maintain that. Is depth enough to call this unique and peculiar, and that's up to you.
What's the consent order length with the consent order? What's the length of it?
59 feet.
59.
59.
Strangely enough, because that's just where we found the mean low water mark
Right.
is 19. So
Yeah.
it seems like that, and that's about what the current dock is on the south property.
Right.
So that seems to be enough to hold a boat.
Yep.
And I did that exercise of taking Devin's sketch, and, well, if the boat is in at the registered, or the
Low water.
compliant length,
Right.
seems like it would fit, especially with the boat lift, because that
Okay.
keeps it up.
Yep.
And the consent order includes the L. It's a 59-foot,
Actually, we did approve the L. It was
Did you
actually an
consent?
error on my part because the L should never be more than 8 feet wide, but we approved it, so we have to live with it.
so it's in the consent, I'm
Yes.
saying, so that's
Right.
part of it. The L shape at 59 is the consent order.
Right.
And the lift. And the lift, but not the canopy, because that would wind up in the setback, and we don't allow, a wooden boat cover in the setback.
The wooden boat cover is long gone. It was a
That's
victim
what
of a
it seemed like.
hurricane.
So at this point, we don't have any information about the canopy,
Right.
so we couldn't really put that in front of you to be approved. We really need more details on what kind of canopy they would want to put on.
Sure. The prevailing winds pretty much destroy all. So,
So to get the facts perfectly clear, consent order, the consent order, they are allowed the 59-foot dock.
Right.
Says nothing about a canopy.
I should check that, because we didn't realize this was a wooden canopy. We were thinking regular boat lift canopy, so I'm not sure if we left it in, yeah, we did say covered boat lift.
You did approve that.
Yeah, which I would
Okay.
expect to be,
So the issue before us is plainly 59 versus 70, whatever.
74.
Yep.
Yes, that's the issue.
And council, you agree with that? then?
yes.
How long does your client own the property?
1972.
Well, no, that was your family. Just,
I beg your pardon?
my client's family has owned it since '72. Her mother was the one that obtained the permit in '99.
Yeah,
You became entitled at 2002-ish?
2003.
2003.
I was just trying to determine if they weren't the new owner.
No, no.
It's been in the family for a while.
Any further questions for
Subdivided, and then
the
they-
applicant?
No.
No. Thank you.
Subdivide it, and then change
Any
it
other
back.
commissioners want to make a comment on this?
It has to
Starting
be
with
in the
Mark.
back.
No.
Blah, blah, blah.
Bill? I see three, now am I seeing a no from Mr. Nisha?
My question would be, how did it get from 54 feet to 74 feet?
59, actually.
The best guess is it was just built that way. It wasn't malicious, there was no intent, it was, they, I guess, my best guess, and it's purely conjecture, is they were asked how long the dock was, they were told it can only be 40 feet, so they just said it was 40 feet. They had no idea how it was actually long it was or anything like that, and it was just kind of built. I know that Molly doesn't necessarily agree with my best guess, and they were made aware of the actual length after the fact. I certainly agree with Molly on that point, but as to kind of the hows and whys, it was, they got a permit and they built in the shape of what the permit was. They weren't paying close attention to lengths and widths at the time.
They were certainly aware that they needed to get a permit if they wanted to do anything beyond whatever the consent order was.
Well, that was, I guess, not till 2007 was when the consent order, or the notice of violations started occurring, and they realized that what was built wasn't actually what was permitted, and by that point in time, the original folks that built the dock and owned the property had since passed. My client came here in 2007, hoped to clear it up, got confused at the meeting, and it fell to the wayside. And then it came back last year, and we're trying to get things resolved. We agreed to the consent order to come in and either apply for a variance or bring the dock into compliance as best we could. We submitted letters from the neighbors saying they have no objections. We have the proof that the dock has been there for 20 years with no safety issues. We know the water's shallow at this depth, or at this location, and we think we're justified in obtaining a variance.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Dave, do you have any comments or questions?
No, fine.
No?
No.
I think I understand it pretty well.
Excuse me, sir. Just,
Bruce? Yes, ma'am, do you want to say something?
yeah.
Certainly. You can just come up. Yeah.
I'd rather not.
No.
I think you can probably hear me. I'm a little upset. My father had a crib dock built. The property was sold. We asked to move it over. My mom got him to move the dock over. We didn't increase it in any size. Whatever it was, whatever my father said, we just moved it from one spot to the other. But we wanted an L because we had small children. We wanted to have them on the dock with us. So we applied to have an L put on it. We didn't increase it because we just moved all the parts and guts from one spot to another. The only thing that was increased was, here's the dock, was that section added there. I mean, my husband and I moved it personally, rock by rock, board by board. So I can tell you, we did not add any length to it. And we actually got to the point where we were like, we can't stand anymore, the water's so cold. So we just did it and left it there. We did not add anything. If we have to change it, I want you to understand, my husband and I will again do it ourselves. That's just how it's done. We do it ourselves. We don't have the means to do it. So anything that has to be changed, we will have to do it ourselves. But we did do it the first time. We did not add any length to it, but we did add the L, which we did ask for.
Thank you. Joe?
Okay, Resolution 2019-37, application number 5226-40-18, applicant is Sandra Smith-Krosky. Whereas the applicant has applied for a variance to maintain a 70-foot long, 18-foot, 9-inch wide, L-shaped crib dock with a canopy boat lift, and the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And the commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-4-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NYCRR 617-.5. And the project is a type 2 action, does not require further review of potential environmental impacts pursuant to this act. And whereas the action is considered to be a minor project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, public notice has been published and distributed. The applicant has requested a variance from 6 NYCRR 646-1.1C. Number 2, no dock or wharf shall be constructed as to exceed the following offshore distance criteria. Number 1, no dock or wharf may extend offshore for more than 40 feet beyond the mean low water mark where the wharf intersects the mean low water mark. And number 5, the maximum width of any pier shall be 8 feet. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated that strict conformance with the regulations will cause unnecessary hardship due to unique and peculiar circumstances which impose substantial financial, technical, and safety burdens. And whereas the commission finds that there is no reasonable possibility that the applicant's property will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulation, and whereas the commission finds that the project pursuant represents the minimum necessary variance required to alleviate the hardship, the commission finds that the proposed project is reasonable and necessary and will not cause unreasonable, uncontrolled, and unnecessary damage to the natural resources of the state, including soils, forests, water, fish, shellfish, crustaceans, and adequate aquatic and land-related environment. Whereas the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area which is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Park Commission hereby approves the above request for variance.
Second?
Did you move it? Yeah. And you seconded it. Just so the commissioners understand, the motion is to approve the request for the variance. And you're either in favor or against it. Mark?
Aye.
No.
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 No. No.
No. Even if I vote yes, that's only three. The motion to approve the variance is denied. You're aware of what your options are at this point, Councilor? You are, you've been here before, right? Okay. Variance request for a wharf modification by Sunnyview Homeowners Association, Village of Lake George. Does staff have anything to introduce that one?
Sure. This was previously scheduled for February. We put it on hold at that point, and this time around, unfortunately, we kind of have to put it on hold as well, but we're hearing it now so that anybody who wants to make comments and the applicant can discuss the application with the commissioners. But at the last minute, we reviewed their deeds, and we were only able to come up with 10 slips that were actually deeded out to the Sunnyview Homeowners Association. And I should back up and say this is a variance to modify their 4 straight piers into a multi-fingered pier that's going to be variances from various sections, mostly the distance from meeting the watermark, because it's going to be out quite far into Civil Lake. But at this point, yeah, we just aren't quite ready, so we're just opening it up for comments, and if the commissioners who have been out there have anything to say to the applicant.
Okay. The applicant is asking for actually a delay until next month
he's looking
for
for
further
attorneys,
information.
so
But that's different. We don't have to table at that point. I'm willing to grant the delay. If we have to go through a table, we have to set specific reasons for tabling it and all that. So the chairman will grant the delay, and we'll open it up to discussion for just anybody who wants to present information.
Sure. And I just want to note, we found a piece of paper in the parking lot that pertains to this. It's an email if somebody needs this.
On the parking lot, okay.
I'm not looking for it.
Sir.
Good morning, my name's Norman Dasher, I live at 51 Sunnyview Lane, and I moved there, I've lived there since January of 2015. I'm a year-round resident, and you probably know the background on the Sunnyview dock situation much better than I have. There's 14 lots that were meant for residential development. Only 12 of those lots actually have deeded dock spaces, but unfortunately 2 are missing right now that we're looking for. The way the docks are configured, the 4 different docks right now, of the 12 spaces that are being used, 4 of them actually require moving the boat behind you or next to you in order to take your boat out. So if your neighbor happens not to be up that weekend, you're landlocked in terms of you can't get your boat out. As a result of that, 2 of us actually keep although we have deeded spaces, we keep our boats up in boat landing so we can access the boats when we want to use them. The request that we have is to reconfigure the docks so that all 12 deeded dock spaces are easily accessible without going through the process of moving other people's boats. In terms of the hardship request, I was actually in a situation this year where my house was listed for sale. I thought I was being transferred by my company to Western Michigan. And in the process of the real estate open houses, I actually lost 2 sales because the Sunnyview docks are notorious for being not easily accessible and not all usable. So it's certainly having an impact on our property value. So the request is for the single dock, and I refer to it as a Christmas tree design with 6 on each side so that everyone can come in and out easily and not have to move neighboring boats in the process of doing that. The delay last year, because we have 14 lots, we were trying to figure a way that we could perhaps add the 2 more spaces for the 2 property owners that don't currently have slips. But after Devin Dixon drew many, many, many pictures for us, we all realized it was just virtually impossible. And then at one point, we talked about could we somehow collaborate with our neighbors on the north or south to increase the shoreline so that we could add those spaces. We realized that was not possible either. So we revised the application. It's back to 12 spaces, and that's the summary of why we're requesting the variance.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment?
Hi, I'm Jim Rose from the Twin Birches. I'm on their south border. And their concept isn't bad, but one of the hardest ships is going to be there for all those boats on the south side of that Christmas tree maneuvering. They're constantly going to be over in that 20-foot neutral zone. And I just put all new docks in the last 15 years and complied with everything. And it's just going to be a tough maneuvering there. And docks 4, 5, and 6 are right in their beach area where they're going to have to be maneuvering when their occupants are swimming there. So that's my big concern. And I have people with kayaks and stuff right there. So that was my concern.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for the gentleman who just spoke. Was this dock configuration in existence when you bought your property?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and this is just for your advice.
Yeah.
You were aware of the configuration when you bought it, so to use that as a hardship is going to be a little difficult for you. This is just advice, it's not.
I understand.
And I'm not a lawyer, that she's sitting next to me, but I'm telling you from experience.
I'm not a lawyer either. If we tried to get 3, everyone's conflicted and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, when you purchase something, and then later find out that it's going to cost you money to sell it, it's not a hardship, it's a mistake.
Right.
I don't mean that cruelly, but I just want to, in other words, I'm saying, look for another hardship.
Well, the hardship really is, as I mentioned, on the real estate, on the resale. And
I know.
within the real estate community, it's no secret, it depends on which dock you have.
Oh, absolutely, certainly. The bigger the dock you get on Lake George, the more your property's worth.
Your HOA doesn't have any boat size limitations? Because having been there, I noticed that there's a couple of larger boats, a couple of smaller boats, and a couple of spots that I personally wouldn't want to.
Well, the deeds actually have a lake associated with the individual docks. I think they were 20 to 20 feet. Some are 20, some are 22, and some are 25 feet.
And that's wordings within the deeds, the individual deeds.
Deeds, yes.
So I should know what I'm getting when I close my house. But do you also refer to beam, the width of the boat?
Yes, there's a maximum, 8 feet wide is the maximum.
Okay, thanks.
Could you stay for a minute? The other question that I have, and that the width was one thing, or the beam, and thank you. We're trying to sort out all of the, and I know you're working, so I'm just trying to help you for next month, trying to sort out all of the deeded rights and how many there are. I can understand why you would like this new configuration, and I'm trying to work as a commissioner with you to kind of get you there if we can, because it does make sense to me why you want to do it. If we can do it in a way that doesn't impact other people, I'd like to find it right. It's a profit loss. But the number is very critical to me on how far out you go, and how big it has to be would be determined by the number that you put in. I can only find so far 10 slips, or 10 deeded rights. So I'm suggesting that I may want to see you come back to 10 instead of 12, but I don't know. The one thing that I have the question about is this Baker's dock, which I don't know how that all lays out in the whole thing. You have 4 docks. You certainly could not fit 16 boats in there because the widths, even at 8 feet, they'd interfere with each other when we did our site visit.
Right.
But I just want you to sort that out so that we know what the justification for getting to 12 is, or if 10 would be more appropriate.
That Baker dock at some point has been transitioned to homeowners. For example, my deed is on a space on the Baker dock. So that Baker dock at some point in time was transferred over to the homeowners, but I don't know when that occurred.
So have your attorney straighten all of that out so that we know what we're dealing with,
Right.
all of the facts.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Jim. Have you seen the proposed dock configuration?
Yes.
Okay. And with 10, let's say it's 10 slips.
If they just extended their boat docks and stayed with their deeded boat sizes, a few of the docks would have no problem. Gary years ago bought Pat Baker's out of her life rights to that Baker.
Okay.
And put it in the association. And all the docks are all the same. If you just let them make their north dock a little longer, they could get the couple extra boat slips they needed without having this major configuration out there. I've been there since '87.
Right.
I've had old wood docks, doctor did my docks. We just added new docks.
Yeah.
And all the docks are just straight. This Christmas tree effect going like this, and everybody's gonna have to back like this to get out. It's very busy there. It's always windy.
Right.
And it's just,
So, well, my question was going to be is your view of keeping the existing configuration is much safer than going with the proposed configuration?
yes,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Even though that the main dock will be moved farther north, you think that's what inhibits you? I believe that, well, I'm farther
If
north
they
than
just
west.
extended their docks now, because the water there is also shallow, they only have so much shoreline to have so many docks
Right.
there. So the beam on them is always going to be a project. They might have to readjust where the boats go. But that Christmas tree it's not going to work. The boathouse is on the north side. All these people, when you go up there in the afternoon in the boathouse, there's 15, 20 boats just bobbing around in our area, on our docks if they're empty, going to the boathouse. So it's just a tough area.
Yeah.
We'd have to go back up sometime with somebody there to say, this is where that long finger,
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
trunk of the tree is going to start from.
Right.
Because when we were trying to eyeball it,
Yeah,
with nobody,
Where the trunk is going out would be fine, but the 30-foot fingers going over to the 20-foot setback, they got some 28-foot boats there, 28-foot boat, and you back out, that's 58 foot, that's up against my dock,
Yeah.
as it's drawn on their plans.
I was thinking the physical fingers themselves were 27.
They're 28 on one side and 30 on the other.
Oh.
30 on it.
Yeah.
So just to clear the dock, they have to move back 30.
58.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
The 30 feet, I think, where the...
You taking all this in?
Oh, I'm taking that.
For next month, okay.
Okay.
Just, if we extended the existing docks, it's not going to solve the issue of the spaces closest to the shore of not being able to fit between the two end docks.
Right.
So that problem exists, even if we extend.
Right.
If we extend the north dock, there's an issue with the boathouse with that. It's shown on the diagram that the dock that's closest to our north dock creates an issue for going in and out on that side.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to bring everything in towards the center, rather than have something on the north and south side.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Did you
Anyone
look
else?
at, instead of 4 straight piers, 3 straight piers, but a little bit longer? Because that would obviously get 12 boats. 3 straight piers, and they could be spaced. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I'm looking at it, this gentleman's concern, and I'm trying to...
Gotcha. And we can ask Devin Dixon to try to draw 3 straight piers as an option and see what that gives us. Certainly.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the parasail operations on Lake George. It's been referred to in the press as we're going to have a hearing. We're not having a hearing today. What we're here for is to listen to, we've already listened to the parasail people. Our ad hoc committee on the parasail operations had a meeting, and they've listened to them. This is a chance for the public to say how they feel about it, any observations they may have. We're not proposing at this point. There are no regulations proposed. There are no restrictions. What we're trying to do is gather information so that we can come up with a plan for the safest operation of parasails on Lake George. And I would encourage anyone here that has an opinion on it. I would appreciate it if you're not necessarily brief, but concise. I'm not sure what those were, how those words go, but what I'm saying is, don't just go on. And if somebody else has already made your point, unless you want to hear yourself speak, you don't really have to reiterate it. What we want is individual observations and opinions on parasail operation on Lake George. And with that, I'll open it up to the audience. If you have any comments on the parasail operation, now's the time to make them. That's right. Anyone here that wants to speak? I see the first hand. Thank you.
Morning, afternoon, I guess it is.
I think it's still morning.
My name is Bruce Lundgren. I live in the South Basin on the east side between Weowaka and the Paulus Fathers, directly across from Tea Island. And we've been there for some 60 years. And my concern with the South Basin now is that with the launching ramp in operation and the rental boats, that there is a safety concern having parasailers going up and down the lake with their parasailing operation. I realize that this is a moneymaker for the businesses, and that's good. But being on the east side, the wake of these parasailing boats that we did deal with 22-footers years ago, now we're dealing with 30-plus footers. And it appears that these parasailing boats just sort of plow along, putting up a horrendous wake, which is destroying our lakefront. I got 350 feet of lakefront, and the wake that these parasailing boats put up, hour after hour, from 8 o'clock in the morning until they cease around 6 o'clock, is horrendous. And this year, I've noticed that the parasailing boats have been more on the west side. Before, they were extremely up and down on the east side and back and forth between Tea Island and the east side. If they could stay out in the middle of the lake, it might be better for the property owners on the east side. There's no need for them to be going up the east side because their customers are on the east side and their customers are all on the west side. So when these huge wakes are put up along our shoreline on the east side, it creates a lot of problems. The safety aspect now with all the boating that's being done down in the South Basin and the number of boats there, and then you've got, I think you allow 6 parasailing boats now to operate up and down the lake. That's a lot of boats going up and down the lake all day long. The other morning it was a little breezy on the lake. I sat on my porch. You know, there wasn't a parasailing boat out there. The lake was delightful. It was a nice place to be. Most days, it is not a nice place to be. We can't sit on our dock. We can't enjoy the view of the lake, and the parasailing boats, when they go by, are just, it's a crawl on my side. And I've been before you folks before, spoke about this in the past, written letters, and there doesn't seem to be much improvement. I'd like to see the boats stay more on the west side. The wakes aren't as big as they are if they were run up and down posts on the east side. Whatever can be done about them, I don't know, but they're out there, and it seems that you want to allow 6 boats out there at a time, and it seems that the Park Commission isn't that concerned about the safety, which they should be concerned about in the South Basin of the lake. Keep them up north, keep them where the lake is wider. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not comfortable to have them there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Good morning. Before I begin, the 2 operators or 3 operators who run parasails on the lake, I don't know who they are, so I'm not for or against them. I'm just here to give a few ideas to your committee, the group. My name is Lance Hillman. I grew up on Lake George. I think we bought our first home, my mom and dad did, about 1951. Since that time, about age 14, I started on flat kites, delta wing kites, and parachutes. And I think some of you may remember my old delta wing kite that was bright orange. I know we'd put on a number of water ski shows for the town here years ago. I first flew a parachute off of the Westbrook Shoal, I'll say it, or sand dune. We used to start down there. And we've been doing that for a number of years. I'm 70 now, a young 70, and I think I started doing this when I was 14, so I've got a little bit of knowledge, plus, along with about 200,000 other people, I've got a commercial pilot's license. So I have a pretty good idea of what you should do and what you should not do. I made some notes here. The driver of the boat who pulls the parachute is the most important person there. He could kill somebody if he's not wide awake. I would have both the observer and the driver have life vests on. I'd also have them do a pre-employment drug test. That's kind of common now. I think they would do that. Those who drive the boat must have experience, because I would never let someone drive. When I was flying, I wouldn't let anybody drive that hadn't flown in the past, because the driver is the most important person in the boat. They need to know how to turn on a dime. They need to know how to stop. They need to know really what's going on. And what I would say, every boat would have a mirror on it so that the driver can look up at the parachutist to see what's going on, so he can react faster than the observer in the boat, who would have to say, "Hey, Joe," or "Hey, Sally, look what's going on." You should have a mirror there. My own opinion. The driver and observer should be willing to put themselves into harm's way. In other words, if they had to crash their boat, run it up on a sand dune, sink the boat, they have to do that, because the most important person really is in the parachute, but you've got the responsibility, so you've got to be on the ball and willing to put yourself in jeopardy if needed. Sometimes, if people don't understand this, if a parachute should tear apart and rip, the person's going to drop. Well, in that case, a lot of people would say, well, I got to slow the boat up. Just the opposite, accelerate, because dropping a person straight down is more difficult, hurts the person more than if you dragged him out. Make it long, he might hit the water going faster, but he wouldn't suffer possibly a fatal injury if he went straight down. First aid, I'd have both people in the boat knowing first aid, CPR certified. The boat drivers need to read the weather, as we would call it. You can tell, at least I can, I've been on the lake for a few years, where the wind's blowing, where it's coming from. You can buy an iPad and get live radar weather on it, so you can see if you've got a storm coming over the mountain here. But you've got to be able to read the water, read the wind. For equipment on a boat, I would say you have to have a safety release. You should be able to release the cable pulling the parachute from the boat. Now, that might be hard to do, but we have it on our kites and parachutes, and if you couldn't do that, I'd carry a machete so you could cut the rope, in case you really needed to do that, because I could see if you had a long enough rope out, and I don't know how long some of these kites are up in the air, but when we had a 1,000-foot rope out, we damn well sure had a safety mechanism so we could release the boat from the kite or parachute. I'd daily inspection of all the equipment, and we think these folks do that today. No smoking. And then I would like to see, and here again, I haven't flown on any of these boats on this lake, the tow post should be ahead of the torque, or the pull, because in the old days when we were pulling it behind an outboard motor, if you were pulling on the left and the propeller went on the left, there's been cases where the boats flipped over because of the torque factor. For the customers, I would let them know they're going to get wet, or they might get wet. Make sure you pull out your cameras, your cell phones, because they may end up at the bottom of the lake. I would have as few riders in the boat as possible, because we've run into situations where the person in the back who's in the air has a problem, and we want to turn the boat as quickly as we could. But if you've got tourists standing up in the back, they might be thrown from the boat. I wouldn't have people in the boat. I'd go back and forth. To me, that's a big exposure. The folks who go up in the parachutes, I would want a demo on land to show them how to get out of it and what to do in case of emergency. I just wouldn't show them. I would actually make them get out of it before they went out. And of course, they would have a life vest on, and I'd want to know who could swim or who couldn't swim. And then finally, if a parachute comes down on top of a person, there's a good chance they could drop. So they've got to know that what they've got to do is get out from underneath that parachute ASAP. The boat driver, on the other hand, then has got to make a turn, a very quick turn. He's got a life vest on, dive off, and help that person get out from underneath the canopy. It's a fun sport. It's dangerous, but I think if you take it and do it properly and safely and let everyone know the risks, you won't have a problem on the way. Folks, anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I noticed.
Yes.
How do you feel about having 6 of these boats out on the lake at the same time?
Well, I'd want to know how long their lines are from the parachute to the boat. I'd want to know if you've got them all going in a counterclockwise, or are they going helter-skelter? How far south can they go, and how far north should they go? I don't think the number is the problem as much as it is how they travel and where they go. And if you had 6 parachute boats out there by 2 or 3 companies, maybe once a week, everybody should get together over a beer or soda coffee and sit down and talk about what we should do, so that you don't get in my way and I don't get in your way. Not because I want to, but just that I don't know what you're up to, what you're planning to do. It's relatively safe. We just got to be aware, and there's some things that I'm not sure whether these folks do or not do. But, I've flown since I was 14. I'm 70, and it's, I've gotten banged up a little bit. I've gotten wet with clothes on. But, I'm here to say that I think it's relatively safe. Yes, ma'am.
Lance, what are your thoughts on docking a boat to exchange passengers?
Say again?
What are your thoughts on docking boats out there to exchange passengers?
I don't know, because I don't know that much about the operation here. If I had to say, if I could do what I would want to do, I'd put maybe a big swim raft out in the middle of the bay, and then come pick up a person and take them out and come back and forth. I think I would do that. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I just think of the safety part of it. I think I'd stay away from the village docks or the docks along the, from the steamboat company.
No, but I'm saying when the boats go out and one goes up against another boat to exchange the passengers out there. Not docking.
If people are wearing, sneakers, rubber sole boots, wearing a life vest, I don't think it's an issue. Is there anybody from the audience that would want to question me or anything? Be glad to help anybody. Be glad to help you guys, gals, up here to make rules. If you do make rules, it just bugs me sometimes personally to see people make rules when they have no clue about what they're talking about. And that's why I'm here.
We don't do that.
No, I don't. Be glad to help any time. You're welcome to call me in Cloverdale. Live next to Mr. Mason, so we're good. I've flown in on his lawn many times.
My feeling about parachutes. I flew airplanes for 38 years. You don't jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
That's true. Right. Hey, the Air Force gave us a parachute on an F-4. So that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yes, Because when you were running the operations, can you recall any incidents that were close ones or things that happened that you had no control over, or maybe you, after the incident occurred, that you felt that you could have done something different?
With the parachute, we only had one incident that I can recall that caught my attention, and that was we were on Westbrook with the sandbar, Westbrook there, and we had the parachute open, and the flyer was a young lady, maybe 16, but weighed maybe 100 pounds, and the wind was blowing from the north, and the wind snapped, the parachute opened, and she went up. And we didn't have the boat with the line all the way out to my mastercraft. But we had the person on the left side and the right side holding the parachute up to get it inflated, and it inflated very quickly, and she went up with it. Didn't hurt her, scared her, caught our attention real quick. And you have to, the driver has to be aware of a lot of this, because if, for instance, you have a north wind, and you're going into the north wind, you're going to go slower than if you're going downwind. And the turn going from upwind to downwind, you've got to accelerate, but the parachute's going to drift south a little bit, so it's going to lose altitude, and it should lose a little velocity. So the person's got to realize that I'm going to have to make my turn wider, and I'm going to have to accelerate at the same time. That's why, as a rule, I wouldn't fly with anyone that hasn't flown before, because they get it. If they're up 800 feet, they get it real well, because they have to. We have rules, well, not rules, instructions. If you run your feet back and forth, that's to slow it down. If you open your feet up like that, it means to speed up. It's relatively safe. I wouldn't ban them saying that it's unsafe practice. I believe it's not an unsafe practice, but everybody's got to think, because you can't hurt someone with it. So let's do your homework beforehand, before we get people up in the air where it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have to say, the beginning of that presentation just sort of said to me, wait a second, if you, as the driver and the crew, have to perhaps give up your life by maybe running ashore somewhere on a shoal, because that just happens to be where the wind and the situation is taking you, and then you've still got this guy up on a kite, it just seems to be an unusually, possibly, as you said, dangerous sport. And it would also occur to me that it's perhaps just a matter of time before something really untoward does happen. But that's the way it hit me when I was listening to the presentation.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments?
Okay, can I respond to him? You are correct. But you've got to remember, if something happens to the flyer, he's going to come straight down and he might get hurt. If you're going to run up on the sandbar, West Bank sandbar, or run over a buoy, or go in the less than wake zone, keep that person up there if you do it. It's to make sure that there's no problem. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Sure.
So my name is Michael Lister. I'm the operations.
If you could come up here, we can hear you better. Not saying that any of us are hard of hearing.
So my name is Michael Wisnick. I'm the operations manager for Parasailing Adventures, JDQ Enterprises. I would like to address a number of comments that gentleman made. I'm sorry, I don't know what his name is. And I'd like to start by saying parasailing has evolved in such a way that if you're not in it in a day-to-day operations, it just passes you by. I use an example of the old beta tape machines, and now we don't even record things, we put them on a little flash drive. We no longer tow boats with parachutes, we now have winch boats. All of our boats have a winch, bring the line in, we're all set with the amount of line that we can have on our boat. We're regulated by the FAA, we're also regulated by WSIA, which is the Water Sports Industry Association, which 97% of the parasail operators in the United States belong to. All of our captains are U.S. Coast Guard certified captains. They're all first aid certified, lifeguard certified, CPR. We talk about putting people in a parachute without any training. The Lake George Park Commission requires that the parasail operators have a minimum of 50 hours before they can even drive a boat, okay? Every insurance company in the United States requires someone to have a minimum of 500 flights before they can, with a bucket, okay, before they can fly people. So all of our captains are well experienced. And the companies in Lake George have had the same operators that have been operating for years. My lead captain is the trainer for custom shoots, which makes 95% of the parasails in the United States and 80% of the parasails in the world. So we have plenty of experience. As far as I'd like to address, as far as a quick release, that's just, I don't even know how to really address that. We all know you can't cut a parachute and just let the people go willy-nilly and fly through the air. That's why we have a winch. Used to be there was a winch, ski nautique, that pulled the people with a fixed line, and it had to go to where the raft was. There was an incident, and the Park Commission decided that they needed to make bigger boats, and instead of going to bigger boats, we went to winch boats. So now, if you're in the south end, and your raft used to be in the north end, you had to get all the way to the north end before you could land those people. Now, all you have to do is turn on your winch, and you pull those people in. More people drown on this lake every year than get killed in parasailing in the whole United States. In the last 21 years, there's been 22 parasail deaths in the United States. You hear about the parasailing deaths, and they're sensationalized because everybody has a cell phone that they're taking videos. Nobody's taking the videos of the jet skis that are slamming into each other, killing both operators. Nobody's taking videos of the guy that falls off the kayak and drowns because he wasn't wearing a life jacket. Those things happen. They happen here in Lake George. This is the safest water activity that you have in the lake. There's never been a death. There's never really truly been a serious incident or accident. We had an incident a while ago, and that was directly related to the fact that the person did not listen to the safety briefing that they were given. The parasail business in Lake George brings in tremendous amount of revenue. We have no problem with following the WSIA standards. They've been taken over the last 5 years. They've put them together. The committee, I believe, is familiar with them. We operate under them, and I don't really think we need any other regulations. And as far as traveling on the west side of the lake with the wakes, that's where all the boats are. I don't really understand how moving from one end of the lake to the other side of the lake is going to affect or minimize the amount of wake that's going on. We don't want to fly next to the shore. We want to fly in the middle of the lake. We're dictated by the winds. So if you look out there, you'll see the parachutes. They're almost always in the same location. We're competitors, yet we fly together because we fly in the safest area that we can. So that's all I have to say. Anybody have any questions?
No, I think we talked to you the other day.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I appreciate what you said, sir, but I want to make one more comment for the rest of the audience, that this is not a hearing. We're not here to decide whether or not we're going to do, we're here trying to get information, okay? If he has an opinion, you have it, we've actually heard.
And what I would like is, if I may, and I'm not trying to be rude, I would love to have you come on our parasail boat so that you can see how our operation operates now. And just maybe a little bit of information might just give you a little bit of a better insight as to how we work.
Be glad to do that.
You know where we are. We are in the pink and green booth right behind the visitor center. If you could come in the next couple of days, we would love to take you.
Good. Thank you. Are you raising your sail low, or do you want to talk? Yeah, go for it, please.
Just quickly, I think that from your perspective, whether they're safe or not, I believe because of their boat, the amount of acres they need per boat, they require a large area, and you can see that in your recreational study. I think what we're talking about is the compatibility of parasails with all the other types of boats. And that's what we really need to think about. Are they incompatible with other uses? Do they exclude other activities and other recreational uses? And I think in many cases they do both. I remember we had this discussion years ago, and when Lieutenant Schneider was here, we talked about the incompatibility issue. And it says that that's really the issue we're trying to work with, because it does push other people away from the areas they want. Or it just consolidates them all into an area so that nobody else can come into it. That's all.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else have any comments? Would you come up here, please, Andrew? Thank you.
Here.
Right there.
My name's Kate Leary. I do work at Parasailing Adventures, and I am the head captain there. I'm the one that trains for custom shoots all over the world. Actually, after this, I'm going to teach Norwegian Cruise Lines. I'm also training the United States Coast Guard on emergency procedures and safety, and then I go on to teach Royal Caribbean how to parasail after that. So I've been all over the world. I've seen every kind of parasail operation, from people being dragged off the beach to the raft to winch boats. The incompatibility issue was pretty much taken care of by the winch boats, and the fact that we can turn on a dime. We can pull people in at any point that we want to. So that pretty much solves it from our end. As somebody who's been flying for 13 to 15 years, I don't even know how long anymore, I know that if you're there, I can safely fly right here and I'm okay. As far as space goes, that's what the winch boats allow. In certain parts of the world, especially over in Asia, you have 80 boats operating in an area that's less than 10 miles wide. 80 parasail boats. They don't use as long a line. They use about 200 feet, to 150 to 200 feet, but saying that 6 boats can't operate in a space as big as we have or whatever, of course we would like that flight zone to be bigger. It gives us more options. However, 80 boats can operate in an area that's 10 miles wide. So as far as space or incompatibility issues with kayaks, small boats, fishing, any of those things, that doesn't create an issue for the safety for our customers, because everyone is highly trained that's out on the water. Us, Joe's, everybody. You actually have some of the most skilled operators in the world that work for both companies. So as far as space issues and compatibility, it doesn't affect the safety of the customers that are up in the air. And it's not just the customers that are up in the air, it's the safety of the people in the front of the boat. You can't pick the people in the air versus the people on the front of the boat. So as far as this whole operation and the safety of everybody on board, including your mate, including yourself, the ability with the winch boats takes care of all of that. If they were being told, like the old days, they wouldn't be able to have 80 boats in an area that big. But now that the winch boats are around, you're able to pretty much turn on a dime, get people in. be able to coexist with other boats, kayaks, things like that. It makes it totally acceptable, so just so you guys know.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you all for your input. Regardless of which side you're on, the input is valuable. Now we have another hot button topic. I can see somebody sitting over there with a half smile on his face that can't wait to get up. And that's kayak flags for, well, it says here for commercial operations. I have a feeling Steve's going to talk about all kayak operations. So I know the first person that wants to speak, and this is just the same as it was for the parasail. We're looking for information. We're not discussing regulations. We want to know what people think. And more than what they think, we'd like to know what they know. That's Steve.
Thank you, Bruce, Commissioners. I just bought a copy of the Chronicle last week. Kayaker 82 hit by motorboat, badly injured. We don't want the next one to say killed. You guys know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on kayak operation? Basically having some type of signal device so that on the kayak so that it's more visible is what we're looking at the moment. Sir?
How about, just a quick comment, how about paddle boards as well?
Power boats? Paddle boats. Oh, okay. See, that's why we make you come up here so that we can...
I understand. Steve dumped a whole cup of coffee on my rear end of the car.
We have demonstrated that flag here.
What's that?
We have a kayak flag right there, what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I see. Is there anyone else that has any comment on the kayak and small craft operation? Is that a better word? Thank you. There you go. Okay, I thank you for your input. Law enforcement, Ken.
That was quick and I'm not ready. Okay. Just give me 30 here and I'll almost know what I'm talking about. There we go. Okay, the Law Enforcement Committee did meet this morning at between 9 and 10, and Lieutenant Johns described a boat swap that we had with Parks, which is greatly beneficial to us. We talked about enforcement police school that's going to be held on the lake in September. And then we went into executive session and discussed some executive session type item. So having said that, I'll read Resolution 2019-39. Whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met on August 27, 2019 to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's Law Enforcement Program, and whereas active law enforcement cases and their status were reviewed in executive session, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report, now therefore be it resolved that the commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee, and I present that as a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Law Enforcement Committee's report. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to back up on the kayak, on the issue on the kayak. Kathy and I were just talking. I believe one of the things we were trying to get to possibly today is to direct staff to come up with a possible regulation change. I don't think we can do anything with general kayak use at this level. We'd need help from Albany to insist that flags be put on these small crafts, but that as part of the marina permit process, That's why the agenda said commercial and commercial use kayaks and so on. And I don't know whether this commission wants staff to work on that for a possible future change in that regulation or not. And I guess maybe I'm asking staff if that's where we need to go, or...
Okay, is this a comment or a request? Because actually what we were here today was to gather information and then decide what we were going to recommend. And
where we're going in the future?
Yeah.
So, okay, that's fine with me, because then it would take another month, but we're at the end of the season anyway, and as long as maybe the winter chair can take this on and make sure that...
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
During the time we get all the things done? Okay.
Well, it would be, I could say it would be a pleasure not to read about a table this winter, but that's okay. Thank you for your input. Where was I? We're about to enter public comments, which that actually would, the commissioner just made a comment, but I'm opening it up once again to the public to have a comment, any comments on any aspect of Park Commission and Lake George operation. This is our general public comment period. Anybody have any further comments? Steve?
I just was talking to Carol outside, and this is a situation that I think everybody's aware of, and she brought a very good point up. And you know, when you get out on the lake, sometimes, you know, I know you guys have got instructions for people when they go to rent a boat now. I believe they have to watch a video. Am I correct? Right. And if you get out on the water and they're not, you know, familiar with the operation of the boat, sometimes you'll see these boats not on a plane, and we've all seen it, you know, the bows up like this, you know, and you can't see in front of the boat, let alone see a kayak. So hence maybe in that training thing, maybe you want to stress planing your boat out, you know, adjusting the bow so you can see over the front, and again, incorporating the flag, you know, just for safety reasons. And I think that's a very valid point, that bring the bow down, let people know that it should be down, better ride, and flags on the kayaks, it's going to save a lot of people.
Ma'am?
One of the things that we just are instituting now is a reflective sticker on the paddles on all sides. And when looking at the flags, we started looking about a month ago. The flags aren't as visible as you think. They really aren't, and we're more than willing to do it. But they're reflective. We've reached out to a bunch of our paddlers, and reflective stickers that go on the paddles, they say, are much more visible. We're looking at both, actually. So, the paddles up in the air, you paddle. And the stickers, we just ordered some from NYS last night. You have to see it. I mean, it's pretty vibrant, and it's kind of neon and shiny, and an orange flag isn't as visible as the sticker on the paddles. So we're going to do that ourselves without you guys making us do it. But those people that got hit recently in that boat are seasoned kayakers. We know them very well. I mean, it's a bad situation right there, but we know what they're doing. They're seasoned. It's a bad accident, but possibly if there was a sticker on those paddles, with the paddle going up and down, the reflection in the sun, it could have slowed things down. So we're doing that ourselves, maybe to help. I don't know about the flag, but we'll do it. It's not as visible. You'd be surprised. It really, maybe if the flag was reflected, possibly, but a lot of the problem in the lake is the sun. That's what everybody says, it's the sun in their eyes. And everybody's got to be safe, so we have 3 ways to keep everybody machine. So the paddle, to me, everybody has a paddle. So that's what we're doing. So I don't know if it helps in any way.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Well, that's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Done.